Part 1 for my code is to initialize the variables. I used example code from Professor Ackerman's alarm system and from the IR demo. I then downloaded the library for the ultrasonic sensor and set up the IR receiver. I set the threshold to 54 centimeters because my box is kind of big. I then set the LED and fire pins. I set arm as a boolean and set it to false to start. False is low, which is 0, and true is high, which is 1. I then initialized the trig and button to 0 to begin. For the void setup in my code, I set the blue LED and the fire as an output. And in the void loop, I began by setting up the IR remote, so arm equals not arm, so that allows the same button to be pressed to arm and disarm the system. I then read the ultrasonic sensor values, and it's set it to measuring in centimeters. For the final part of my code, in the void loop, there are several if statements. So if arm is equal to 0, so the system's not armed and the button hasn't been pressed, then the blue LED is low and the fire igniter is low. Then if the button is pressed and the system is armed, then if the threshold is below 54 centimeters and the trig value is equal to 0, then the blue LED will turn on and it'll start blinking, but the fire igniter will still be low because the box hasn't actually been opened. So then if the box is opened and it's now reading above the threshold, then the fire igniter will go high, which will ignite the fireworks, and they'll start going off. My fireworks system flowchart is basically just the same thing as my code. When the system is in a disarmed state, arm equals 0 and trig equals 0 and everything's off, then you check if the button was pressed on the IR remote. And if it wasn't pressed, then it goes back to the disarmed state and basically stays in this little loop. And if it was pressed, then it goes to the next little box where the system's armed, so arm equals 1, and trig is still equal to 0. So my ultrasonic sensor is on and reading, and then the blue LED is on, which is blinking, and then the fire igniter is still off. Then you see if the package is opened, and if the package is opened, then that means the threshold is above, and it'll go into an alarmed state, and trig will still equal 0, but the LED blinks and the fire igniter turns on. So this basically allows the igniter to flash on and then back off because I don't want it to still just continue burning. But if you go back to the package opened and it's not above the threshold, that means the package is still closed. So the arm button, then you stay in this little loop where you keep waiting for the package to open, basically. And for the wiring diagram, the blue LED represents a Christmas light, and all resistors are 220 ohms. I have the ultrasonic sensor hooked up and the IR receiver module. And then as for the Christmas light, it uses a transistor. So the transistor, the center part of it goes through a 220 ohm resistor and then to the Arduino. And then the positive side of my Christmas light is attached to a 9-volt battery, and the negative side is attached to the transistor. And then the other side of the transistor is just grounded. So the fireworks are fused up here, and the ultrasonic sensor is right here. The breadboard and everything's under here to protect it from the fuse. And the Christmas light and the match is right there.